Chapter 383 Breaking out from the siege. The all-terrain self-driving fort she drove had been enhanced. The moment it entered its control mode, over 100 cannons started to fire furiously. It was as if it did not require any soul power at all as it shut the soul cannons placed by the Soul Engineer legions to smithereens. It actually did not require any soul power. Specifically, it did not require any of Jingxian's soul power. This all-terrain self-driving fort was equipped with more than 30 Class 5 milk bottles. It could fight for hours without recharging, and Jingxian now used it to its maximum potential. Instantly, the Soul Engineers whose positions were under fire were sent running in all directions. All of the Soul Engineer legions of the Sun Moon Empire had a subordinate army. After all, Soul Engineers were more important and costlier. Someone had to do the dirty and tiring work, such as raising the outer defenses. That was work for the subordinate army. To the south of the city, there were more Soul Engineers in position, numbering around 300. There was a Class 8 Soul Engineer, 2 Class 7 Soul Engineers, and 5 Class 6 Soul Engineers, coupled with the many other Soul Engineers who had taken up position there. Their defenses were very tight. However, at this moment, the Class 8 Soul Engineer had brought the 2 Class 7 Soul Engineers to reinforce the south of the city. There were no strong Soul Engineers left over there. The subordinate army, realizing that something was wrong, charged over. However, the many less powerful Soul Engineers fell into despair under the heavy bombardment from the all-terrain self-driving fort and the sharp sword chi of the sword fanatic. The inky black light only started to dissipate at this very moment. Shu Sanchi did not even need to maximize the power of his Swanwu domain. All he had to do was to ensure that its area of effect was maximized. Everything within a 250-meter radius appeared to have turned into a swamp. Everyone, both Soul Engineers and the subordinate army, who rushed into this area immediately felt as if they had dived into a deep pool of mud. There was no way they could even see the location of the sword fanatic and the all-terrain self-driving fort. This was the strength of the Tang sect and Shrek Academy. While Soul Engineers continually threatened the position of Soul Masters, truly powerful Soul Masters were highly intimidating. Even Shu Tianran, who had a high opinion of himself, had no choice but to collaborate with the Holy Ghost Church because of his fear of powerful Soul Masters. Shrek Academy was one such power he feared greatly. Shu Sanchi and the other 3 could not sustain this onslaught for long. Once the Soul Engineer legions reacted properly, they would gather even more soul tools to take care of them. They would be in trouble then. However, by launching this sudden attack, what they wanted to do now was not to destroy the positions of the Soul Engineers, but to create as much chaos as possible. This would create enough opportunities for Huo Yuao and the others to break out with the hostages. Inside the water prison, the many hostages rushed out like a group of starving tigers had just been released. They had suffered greatly over the past few months, and they hated the evil Soul Masters with all their guts. The moment they could, they covered the entire area with long-range attacks launched at full power, killing more than half of the weaker evil Soul Masters. The Zhong brothers realized that the situation was turning bad for them, and they made their way to the exit while defending themselves. Their attackers were a few hundred Soul Masters. Even the weakest ones had at least 4 rings. Even if there were no powerful title Duo, there were still many powerful Soul Sages and Soul Duo, most of whom were teachers or powerful members of the various sects. Their numbers rivaled that of a Soul Engineer Legion. In terms of individual fighting abilities, they surpassed the Soul Engineer Legions. How could the brothers possibly beat them? Huo Yuao did not try to stop the Zhong brothers from leaving. The 3 of them were extremely powerful, and they specialized in controlling the souls of soul beasts to fight. They were all 8-ringed evil Soul Masters, and the moment they got over their shock, they would wreak horrific destruction. Ma Xiaotao could not delay the 2 evil titled Duo for long, either. After such a huge commotion, they would surely return shortly. Hence, the most important thing for them to do was rush out. They had to break through the seal of the Soul Engineers outside and reach somewhere spacious. Even a titled Duo would not dare to fight against more than 100 Soul Masters at once. Hence, the most important thing right now was to break out as far as they could. Huo Yuan knew what to do afterward. He activated his spiritual detection sharing fully, and in the minds of every emotionally charged person, the same voice resonated. Calm yourselves. Follow me and break out. As he said that, Huo Yuan turned around and looked toward the south of the city, which had been completely flattened. His body started to shine with an eye-catching jade green light. In the next instant, a thick jade green pillar of light pierced through the sky and bombarded the area over there. An intense explosion sounded, and flakes of ice flew in all directions. A huge hole had appeared in the wall. Huo Yuao's soul thruster shone with light once more as he quickly arrived in front of the hole. As the hostages watched, dark golden claws almost 10 meters long appeared suddenly and silently. The broken hole became 5 times larger. Someone, either a powerful member of a random sect or a teacher, gasped and said, "The dark golden terraclaw, go, now." Huo Yuao cried out. This time, his voice was filled with spiritual undulations. While many of these hostages' soul power had recovered, and they had also been soaked in a reinvigorating medicine, they had also been imprisoned in the water prison for a few months. Their strength was far from optimal. Hence, they could not wait until their bodies showed signs of fatigue. There could be no delay in their breakout. As for the Zhong brothers, Huo Yuao believed that they would not dare re-enter for the moment. There were a few hundred Soul Masters here. No matter who was guarding them, surely their first response right now was to get help. Huo Yuao, who was at the front, rushed out first. The moat outside was now riddled with explosions. Right now, the water from the moat was flowing outwards. Huo Yuao's soul thruster fired down to ensure that he could remain suspended in midair. As his hands touched the water, one could clearly see that they were enveloped in diamond-like ice crystals. This was his ice empress pincer. A cold gas started to spread and turned into 2 rays of emerald green light. First, they struck the surging water, which slowed, and then stopped. Then, under the terrifying chill of his ultimate ice, Huo Yuao froze the moat solid. As he pulled his hand apart, he cast his gaze afar. The Soul Engineers had been thrown into complete disarray. At this moment, a team of around 50 Soul Engineers was rushing toward them. When they saw Huo Yuao, a ball of blinding red light flew toward him like a shooting star in the night sky. A smile crept across Huo Yuao's face. He had expected this. The 50 Soul Engineers stationed outside the southern gate were caught between a rock and a hard place. They had realized that something was amiss at their flank, but they had no choice but to push forward. As he watched the high explosive bomb hurtling toward him, Huo Yuao did not try to dodge. A layer of golden light shone from his body and his eyes turned completely golden. In his eyes, he was analyzing the path of this high explosive bomb. With his terrifying spiritual power, his ability to analyze any single object was intimidating. He raised his right hand, and diamond-like ice crystals shone brightly on his hand. Then, he reached out to grab the incoming high explosive bomb. Poof! A curious scene appeared. The moment Huo Yuao's right hand grabbed the high explosive bomb, the explosion the Soul Engineers were expecting did not materialize. Instead, the red light surrounding the high explosive bomb faded. Its impact, however, made Huo Yuao waver slightly in midair. Following that, the high explosive bomb was completely destroyed in Huo Yuao's hand. A high explosive bomb's power came from an intense compression of fire-type soul power. With the formation array of a Class 6 soul tool, its soul power was further destabilized before it was fired. Once it hit its target or met any resistance, it would disrupt and cause a massive explosion. What Huo Yuao did was use his spiritual power to find the location of its unstable core and then, with his ultimate ice, freeze it. While it sounded simple, it was extremely difficult to locate the highly unstable core of a powerful high explosive bomb in such a short time. However, he did it almost perfectly. It's my turn. Huo Yuao muttered to himself. Then, the air around him started to twist and turn as he activated his spiritual interference. In the eyes of the 50 Soul Engineers facing him, the person who was floating in midair disappeared. The originally destroyed city walls regained their original state, as did the moat. It was as if nothing had happened, and everything had been a dream. For the 50 Soul Engineers, who were all armed to the teeth and wielding their favorite soul tools, this scene left them speechless. They had no qualms about attacking their enemies, but right now, the city walls and the moat in front of them were completely intact. Where were their targets? How could they fire with no target? No, this is an illusion. I ordered the Soul Engineer Legion commander was a Class 8 Soul Engineer. He had seen many things in his life, and after a momentary pause, he realized that something was amiss. However, he did not manage to issue his order. An odd golden whirlpool suddenly appeared above his head. He felt everything in front of him go blurry, and forcibly swallowed his words. His thoughts were scattered. This was Huo Yuao's 4th soul skill, spiritual confusion. While Huo Yuao was at rank 60, he only had 5 soul rings. However, with the terrifying strength of his spiritual power, while he lacked the fighting abilities of a 6-ring soul master, he had no need to conserve soul power like other soul masters as he used the many soul skills of his spirit eyes. He used his spiritual power to replace the functions of his soul power. From when he had first entered the water prison until now, he had used his soul skills one after the other without stopping, yet remained in his prime state. 1 versus 50. Huo Yuao was not that dumb or that powerful. His opponents included Class 7 and Class 8 Soul Engineers. Right now, his role was not one of an assault-type Soul Master, but instead one of a control-type Soul Master. His objective was to control the entire battlefield. After a momentary pause, dozens of figures rushed out of the illusion from the river, which still appeared intact. The greatest advantage of Huo Yuao's spiritual detection was fully exemplified at this very moment. After he broke out from the water prison, he used his spiritual detection to accurately determine the distance of the 50 Soul Engineers from the southern part of the city. They were less than 100 meters away from the river. This distance, the Soul Engineers, was not safe at all. After the dozens of Soul Masters rushed over from the frozen riverbed of the river, they would be less than 100 meters away from the confused Soul Engineers. Under Huo Yuao's spiritual detection, the hostages were split into 3 forces. Among them, those with 6 rings and above were split into 2 groups. One group would rush forward first as the vanguard. The other group would remain at the back to keep the safe. The other Soul Masters, who had fewer than 6 soul rings, would remain in the center. This meant that the first wave of those who rushed out all had at least 6 rings. They were all at least Soul Emperors. The moment they rushed out of the river, they maximized their speed as they rushed toward the Soul Engineers like frenzied tigers. The Soul Engineers finally reacted. Rays of light shot out from their soul tools. If the 2 sides were in formation, and if there was enough distance between them, the hostages would not have an advantage no matter how powerful they were. This was because the Soul Engineer legions of the Sun Moon Empire had trained together for a very long time. Various soul tools could work in tandem with one another, helping each other out, and hence, they would be able to project much more power than what their numbers might suggest. However, the 50 Soul Engineers were currently faced with an impossible scenario. They had lost their center of command, and they could not put enough distance between themselves and their enemies. When they finally reacted, they were naturally unable to unleash their most powerful attacks. The Soul Masters they faced right now were the best from some of the most powerful sects and schools in the world. They were the elites among the elites. Furthermore, these elites had a commander. Their commander's spiritual detection covered the entire battlefield, and was able to accurately convey distance, speed, angle, strength, and other types of information on every soul ray and soul cannon shell to them. Their commander was none other than the control-type Soul King, the Eyes of Asura, Huo Yuao. Huo Yuao was able to gain the respect of the #1 academy in the world, Shrek Academy, enter the Sea God's Pavilion before the age of 20, and become one of its members. This was due to his strength and unlimited potential. With each life and death experience, adventure, and obstacle, he was able to grow at a speed that even Elden did not anticipate. After he recovered his ability to move again and completed his closed-door training, Huo Yuao was like a caterpillar that had finally become a butterfly. He had reached a completely new level. Among Shrek's 7 monsters, he was ranked first in terms of strength. His overall strength surpassed that of a soul sage. Spiritual detection, spiritual sharing. In the eyes of the Soul Engineers and Soul Masters who were fighting, these were godly skills. 4 8-ring Soul Duo, 12 7-ring Soul Sages, and around 20 Soul Emperors charged out in advance of the hostages. They were the elites of the elites. Under the instructions of Huo Yuao's spiritual detection, coupled with the furious fighting spirit that rose non-stop in their hearts, how could they show any mercy to their foes? When the commander of the Soul Engineer Legion, the Class 8 Soul Engineer, finally snapped out of the confusion Huo Yuao had induced in him with his spiritual confusion, he saw dozens of furious Soul Masters who were only a hair's breadth away. The Soul Masters were able to rush up to the Soul Engineers without incurring any casualties. One could imagine what happened next. Huo Yuao did not participate personally in the fight. He flew above the heads of the Soul Engineers and unleashed his spiritual interference to its fullest extent, enveloping the battlefield completely. Near the core where most of the fighting took place, nothing other than sound could spread to the outside world. Since Huo Yuao's spiritual interference reached its domain stage, this was the first time he had used it over such a huge area. As the 50 Soul Engineers were destroyed, all of the hostages rushed out of the water prison. At this moment, in the sky above Sunrise City, one could see colorful fireworks exploding. This was probably a distress signal the 3 Zhong brothers had released. Huo Yuao did not even look at it. Right now, he was in a race against time. The 3 Zhong brothers were not scary. Even the 2 evil titled Duo were not scary. What was scary was the huge amount of troops that could come from Radiant City. Once they arrived, they would be in serious trouble. After all, the 5 most powerful Soul Engineer legions of the Sun Moon Empire were all equipped with flying-type soul tools. If they used their flying-type soul tools, they would be able to reach Sunrise City from Radiant City pretty quickly. Charge! Without giving the hostages any time to rest, Huo Yuao immediately gave the order to charge. Shu Sanqi and the rest still held on, but how much longer could they hold on? They could only escape if they broke through the positions the Soul Engineers had taken up to the south of the city. The taste of freedom was a huge motivation for these hostages. Every single one of them was in an almost frenzied state as they charged south. At this moment, a thunderous explosion sounded. This made Huo Yuao, who was in midair, turn his head. His face turned dark. How can this be possible? How can it be so fast? Where did the thunderous explosion come from? It came from the northern city walls of Sunrise City, which was the only part that had not yet been hit. However, Huo Yuao had instructed Jing Xian to plant a large number of soul bombs there. The one who could detonate these bombs was Iketu. Before Iketu left, he had planted an aerial surveillance tool there to monitor the situation. This was because any soldiers from Radiant City who were rushing over to assist their compatriots had to reach the northern walls first. By placing the bombs, they hoped to injure and kill many of them before they could arrive, as well as attract their attention. The timing of the explosion was completely controlled by Iketu, but the bombs actually went off so quickly. What did this mean? This meant that the soldiers from Radiant City were here already. Only a few minutes had passed since the start of the mission. According to Huo Yuao's calculations, the soldiers from Radiant City, upon realizing that something was amiss, would need at least an hour to organize themselves, set off, and arrive. This would be more than enough time for him and the hostages to evacuate. However, the arrival of the soldiers from Radiant City was much faster than he had expected. This completely turned the situation around. He quickly informed the hostages to charge toward the positions of the Soul Engineers with all their might. After they defeated their opponents, they had to regroup with the 4 of them, who would then give them instructions to escape safely. After he conveyed this message, Huo Yuao turned around and flew back towards Sunrise City. Not only did he have to pick up Iketu, but he also had to find Nankyu. If he could not save Nan Shuishui soon, it would be immensely difficult later, as Sunrise City would have turned into a tiger's den. Of course, for most people, Sunrise City had already turned into a tiger's den. Huo Yuao was no longer able to control whether the hostages would escape. However, according to his calculations, the series of explosions at the northern city walls would create a huge problem for the soldiers who were rushing to render assistance. Even if they flew, they would surely descend to ascertain the situation upon seeing the explosion. After all, they could not possibly know what was happening in Sunrise City. The Soul Engineer Legion station to the south of Sunrise City had only 250 men after 50 of them left the main group. After being harassed by Shu Sanqi and the others, they were unable to hold their ground in face of the attacks by powerful Soul Masters. Hence, the hostages still had a good chance of escaping. Huo Yuao's important task right now was to get everyone from the Tang sect out and save Nan Shuishui. Despite having been trained under the ultimate soldier plan, Huo Yuao knew that emotions played a huge part in his decision-making. The ideal plan now would be to abandon Iketu and Nankyu and help the hostages escape. He should not be turning back. However, could he really do that? Of course not. He was not a machine whose only purpose was to complete missions or kill people, but a human with flesh and blood. How could he abandon Iketu and escape all by himself? As for Nankyu, while his ties with her were not as deep as his with Iketu, she was still out to save her mother. For Huo Yuao, nothing touched him more than maternal love. This was why he had told Nankyu that if Nan Shuishui was not in the water prison, he would stay behind to help her save her mother. He knew the pain of losing one's mother very clearly. This time, Huo Yuao did not fly back to Sunrise City via the city walls. Instead, he released his butterfly wings and ascended vertically. Covered by his imitation, he flew straight into the sky. The advantage of doing this was so that he could observe the soldiers who were coming to assist those in Sunrise City. At the same time, he could bypass the Zhong brothers. Without the threat from aerial soul tools, Huo Yuao felt much more at ease with his flying type soul tool and imitation. This feeling accompanied his ascent 500 meters into the sky, and then it vanished quickly. To the north, he could clearly see that there were rows of dark blue figures landing near the city. These dark blue figures only numbered in the hundreds, but the formless awe and pressure they exuded almost suffocated him. When he saw these dark blue figures, Hua Yuao's face changed instantly. While he had never personally seen the most powerful Soul Engineer legions of the Sun Moon Empire, he was able to ascertain the extent of the threat with his spiritual awareness. The pressure he felt from those hundreds of figures surpassed what he had felt from the Soul Engineer legions stationed outside the city. The nation protecting hand. Only the 5 most powerful Soul Engineer legions of the Sun Moon Empire could exert such pressure. The Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineer legions were tasked with protecting Radiant City. Unless the Emperor left the city, they would not leave the capital so easily. And yet, these figures, each giving off a dark blue light, were from one of the Beast Lord ranked Soul Engineer legions. No matter which one it was, its presence here would be catastrophic. The 2 500-man strong Soul Engineer legions stationed around Sunrise City were comprised of Soul Engineers who had 2 or 3 rings. Their entry requirement was 2 rings, and while their overall strength was formidable, they depended primarily on coordinating the use of their soul tools, fighting as a group, and positioning their soul tools strategically to fight. For the Beast Lord ranked Soul Engineer legions, they were all comprised of Soul Engineers who were equivalent to Soul Ancestors. Each of them could use flying type soul tools, and could attack from both land and air. Their commander was a class 9 Soul Engineer. All 300 of the Soul Engineers in such a legion were extremely formidable. The explosive power and fighting abilities of a Beast Lord ranked Soul Engineer legion was greater than a heavily armored cavalry legion of more than 10,000 men. Their direct fighting abilities were terrifying, coupled with their flying abilities. How far could the hostages run should they start their pursuit? Why were they so fast? How can this be possible? Just as he was coming to terms with his shock, Hua Yua suddenly sensed a signal from Hikaetu. Hikaetu no longer had access to his spiritual detection, but he remained in contact with him via a method used by Soul Engineers. With a simple soul power frequency emitter which he had pre-installed, Hua Yua was able to locate him accurately when he used it. He descended sneakily, and was able to find Hikaetu not far from the city gates. Hikaetu's face was grim as he said, Yuao, how is it? Did we manage to get them out? Hua Yua nodded and said, yes, we did. They're all rushing out according to our original plan. However, they'll still need time. Hikaetu said solemnly, Radiant City has already sent backup. My aerial surveillance soul tools were instantly destroyed. Hua Yua nodded and said, I saw that. I wonder how long the explosion at the northern city walls can hold them off. Second senior brother, go. Rendezvous with everyone else. I'm off to look for Kyukayu. You have to escape as fast as you can. Don't worry about us. Hikaetu was momentarily stunned as he said, Yuao. Hua Yua raised his hand and did not let him continue. He smiled brightly and said, second senior brother, believe in me. Hikaetu inhaled. He knew that at this moment, time was of the utmost importance. He nodded vigorously and said, be careful. If you face overwhelming obstacles, don't force it. I'll make a move first. With that, the light behind his back lit up, and a dark light flashed. After the light from the flying type soul tool was completely shielded, he shot into the sky and disappeared. This operation was built on destroying all aerial surveillance soul tools. If not, how could they fly so smoothly in the air? Unlike what he told Hikaetu, Hua Yua did not go and find Nankyukayu immediately. On his forehead, his eye of destiny opened once again. He unleashed his spiritual detection to its maximum extent, which covered the skies above Sunrise City. His spiritual intent also expanded massively. As he did all this, he quickened his pace toward the place where he expected Nankyukayu to be. Before long, he stopped and looked up in a certain direction. A purple gold light started to shine from his eye of destiny. Not far from where he was, a low rumble sounded in the sky. A figure descended unsteadily from the heavens and fell down to the city. As a qualified commander, the first thing one would do upon arriving at such a chaotic scene would be to obtain information. Even though the commotion in the northern part of the city was greater, there was no way no one would be deployed to investigate the other parts of the city. What Hua Yua had to do now was stop these people and buy time for his comrades. While he was clear that he could not hold them back for long, any amount of time was good enough. Bastards. Is this how you look after the hostages? Ma Xiaotao bellowed as she looked at the Zhong brothers. While the Zhong brothers were older, they did not dare to show any signs of discontent in front of her. All of their heads were bowed, and the dozens of evil soul masters around them were as quiet as crickets. The third and fourth elders stood behind Ma Xiaotao. Their faces were green. They had just come from the northern part of the city. When they were there, they could not help but inhale a breath of cold air when they saw the huge explosion. The third elder accurately deduced that only a class 8 stationary soul cannon shell could be this destructive. All of the positions for the Soul Engineer's soul tools were obliterated, and at least 200 Soul Engineers were dead or injured. Only some more powerful ones were able to escape after detecting the incoming attack. The eastern city walls and the western city walls had been destroyed as well. At this moment, Ma Xiaotao ordered everyone to investigate in depth. They had to locate the enemy, but third elder and fourth elder were both highly experienced thanks to their age. They immediately deduced that someone was trying to create a diversion. Their target was the hostages. Persuaded by them, Ma Xiaotao had to return with them. However, at this moment, another explosion rocked the northern city walls. This time, Ma Xiaotao brought the 2 elders on a detour to see what was going on. When they saw the dark blue figures appear, her heart sank. She knew that they were in trouble. Indeed, when third elder and fourth elder saw the Soul Engineer Legion, they instantly asked to return to the southern part of the city to look after the hostages. After all, they had just arrived. The southern city wall was blown to bits by Hua Yuao, who had used his ice explosion on the moat. The hostages all rushed out of the city, but the Zhong brothers had not pursued them. Instead, they waited for their return. How could Ma Xiaotao not take this chance to blow up in anger? Zhong Tian chuckled bitterly and said, Holy lady, it's not that we don't want to give chase. You know that there were more than 500 hostages. They all had at least 4 soul rings, and there were a whole bunch of soul duo, soul sages, and soul emperors. If we gave chase, we would have died. Ma Xiaotao said angrily, didn't you say that there was enough soul eradicating powder? How did they find the antidote to it? Only the leader has the antidote for the soul eradicating powder. If you don't use enough of it, it'll lose its effect. How did you guard those hostages? Zhong Tian said as if he had been wronged. Holy lady, you can't blame me. Why don't you ask those under me? We definitely used enough soul eradicating powder. Earlier, the legs of the hostages were soft as jelly. Ma Xiaotao said coldly, go get some water from the water prison and assess the amount of soul eradicating powder inside. Do you think that I have wronged you? Wait a minute, holy lady, the third elder said solemnly. Now's not the time to find out who is responsible. The most important thing right now is to recapture all the hostages. We should move immediately. While there are many powerful people among the hostages, their bodies should have deteriorated from their stay in the water prison. Now is the best time to pursue them. As long as we can delay them, they will all be caught when the Sun Moon Empire's Soul Engineer legions catch up. Ma Xiaotao's eyes glinted as she said, all right, everyone, pursue them with me. She had no way of delaying them anymore. If not, they would sense that something was amiss. The killing intent in her heart had been triggered. She was ready. When they caught up to the hostages later, she would ambush the elders. As long as these 2 titled duo were injured, the hostages could easily defeat the remaining evil soul masters. The main problem now was that the Soul Engineer Legion, coming from the north, would soon reach them. Let's go. Ma Xiaotao, along with third elder and fourth elder, as well as the Zhong brothers, rose into the air as they began their chase. When they left the city, the 2 elders and the Zhong brothers all had ugly expressions on their faces. This was because it was completely silent and peaceful outside the city. Hundreds of hostages had seemingly disappeared without a trace. All that was left were the ruined positions the Soul Engineers had formerly manned. This is impossible. They rushed out only 15 minutes ago. How did they take so little time? The 3 Zhong brothers were stunned. No matter how one put it, there used to be 300 Soul Engineers, an entire Soul Engineer Legion, outside the city. Among them were Class 6 and Class 7 Soul Engineers. Even if they could not resist the many Soul Masters, they should have been able to delay them. How could they know that Chu Sanchi and the rest were teleporting from afar and then dropped in on the Soul Engineer Legion, attacking them from the inside? The Soul Engineer Legion was split up. The most powerful Soul Engineers were instantly eliminated by the group of Soul Masters led by Hua Yuao. The other Soul Engineers, who had 2 to 3 rings, how could they resist so many hostages, all of whom were savage with hate? The disappearance of the hostages was another trick Hua Yuao had played on them. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.